Thank you. We've been joined by Senator Jesse Hamilton, who is the ranking member on the Banking Committee. And if you'd like to make an opening comment, or you want to go straight to questions for Mr. McCrell, it's up to you, Senator Hamilton.
I'll make an opening comment, Chairman.
Okay. I know Senator Sanders has some questions, and I'm sure the Assemblywoman does. So proceed.
Thank you, Chairwoman. It's working? Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you for coming this morning. I greatly appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
This is a very important topic for minority women businesswomen and minority businesses, especially in my community. I have the Sunset Park, Gowanus, Prospect Heights, Crown Heights, Flatbush, and Brownsville, all areas in need of economic development. And many times, I'm happy to hear that you said that you've read the report by the Institute, Black Institute, and you do agree with it. So we're at a point where we know is a problem, and we need to resolve it or solve it to get more money out there, more lending. I just want to, as far as, I was at an event last night, and New York State is the financial capital of the world, so you would think there'd be enough resources to go around for everybody to stimulate growth. And I wish we would have, I'd like to have your officers come down to my district if possible. And I just want to thank the Senator Savino for convening this hearing, and for Assemblywoman Ranice Bouchard for being in the forefront and advocating for small business owners, and to my colleague Senator Sanders. So I just want to say we have work to do, and I know it could be done. I have faith in it. But for a lot of contractors, I believe some women spoke about it, who do get contracts from the state, is there any way to provide bridge loans? I mean, if you get a contract from the state, you know the state's going to pay the contractor. We all know that the payment's going to take a while to get to the contractor. And a lot of small business owners don't have the cash reserves in order to wait 6 months in order to get payment. So if we know a contractor is going to get a loan, and we know there's going to be a late payment from the state, why can't we facilitate the small business owner who's always adversely impacted by not having a cash reserve, to give them a small bridge loan so they can buy their equipment and pay their staff, and then once the money comes down from the state, you would be paid first through an assignment of the payment from the state, that the lien holder would pay first, and then the contractor would get his money. And this way, I think we would stimulate a lot more minority contractors if we had a system in place to have a bridge loan once you get awarded the contract, to keep these small business owners afloat.
Well, first of all, as a native-born from Flatbush.
Oh, great.
And having recently finished the financing of the garden on top of the Whole Foods in Gowanus.
Oh, great.
Familiar with that project as a startup. You talk about startup businesses with risk. A garden on the top of Whole Foods in Gowanus is a challenge. But Senator, you've just described to a T a program called Bridge to Success.
Okay.
That is sponsored by Empire State Development, which is administered by us. And I think that I addressed my comments to it prior to your coming into the room. But while it's a relatively new program, it has not achieved the public attention that it deserves, because it does precisely. It actually does one step farther than that. We will accept an application from a small business, because there is a certain chicken to the egg to this, because oftentimes you can't get a contract unless you are able to develop financial ability to perform, right? So you're not going to get the contract. So first you got to get the contract. So we start with the MW, in an ideal world, we start, and our materials are with the MWBE and our contacts with the state. Get the business to us as soon as possible. We will underwrite them in the dark, so to speak, without reference to a particular contract. So when they go to bid on a contract, they can say, we have been approved for financing up to $300,000 for mobilization capital in the event that we win this contract. So they can go in with a letter of commitment from us saying, if you win the contract, you have the financing. So once again, it demonstrates the financial ability to perform, which is a key starting point that many people lose sight of. They talk about the mobilization capital, but you got to get the contract first. And in order to get the contract, you have to develop financial ability to perform. We did a loan to a woman who was trying to demonstrate that, and she was installing, believe it or not, Venetian blinds or awnings or curtains, I'm not sure which, on like 5,000 windows in the state of New York. I think many within squawking distance of where I'm sitting. And she had, in order to get that contract, she had to have that commitment letter to develop the financial ability to perform. So demonstrate financial ability to perform, get the loan commitment, move on to the bidding process, and then we do exactly what you've suggested. I mean, as if you were in the room when the program was designed. You make loans to them, but you also have to understand the contract, because you can't take the assignment of the proceeds of the contract and say, okay, we'll give you 100, then the first 100 comes out of the contract, comes back to pay us, because then they're still in the same place. What you have to do is structure that so you give them that mobilization capital and recover little bits of it over the progress payments, because the idea is not to create somebody reliant. The idea is to create self-reliance. The idea is to let them get to the end of the contract and term out some of that debt so that they're more, they're more financially fortified to go on to the next project. But as I said, the opportunity to talk to groups of MWBEs that, that only essentially representatives of government can provide us with, because they have the, that's a rallying cry to which many of them will respond. Give us the opportunity to present these programs would be very much appreciated.
Thank you very much for
Yes, sir.
answering the question. You're right on point.
Senator Sanders?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Before I start, let me encourage you, sir. I understand that yours is not the major role, but I was looking at your board of directors, and it doesn't reflect the greatness of our great state. We're missing some pieces here, sir. And the more that we can reflect the greatness, perhaps it will bring about its sensitivity to deal with the issue. I understand that it's not you who makes these decisions, but if you're kind enough to share with the decision makers, as I will share with the decision makers on this side, that New York State is the Empire State. It has some of the greatest people that the world has ever seen, or will see for that matter. I know this because I'm the former chair of economic development at the City Council of New York. I was the first person of color to do it. So I had a chance to see the greatness of New York reflected in all kinds of people that came before me. I'm sure we're missing some people, but that gives us something to work on. To the issue at hand, you had mentioned that demand is down, and perhaps a better way of looking at it may be to say that hope is down. That hope of people believing that there is an even playing field that they can compete on. All too often I have discovered that there is a great belief, of which I must admit I share, that we don't have an even playing field in New York State. That this business is really not open to all, and we should spend a lot of our time opening it. Now, are you familiar, of course, with the Gramesh Bank from India and that process that they're using? They're very successful in micro lending, very successful. I think that their default rate is something like 2% or something of that nature. We need to consider alternative ways of prudent banking. That many of these cultures have other ways of banking. Some of them call it the box, some of them call it all kinds of other things that traditional banking may not take into account. And if we are able to look at these, we may be able to find more people to bring into the field, more people who can come in and help work on these things. Everyone knows that that small business hires the most people, most workers. Another fact that we know less is that small businesses tend to hire people who look like themselves. So if we're not getting a well-rounded amount of people doing these things, we're going to see unemployment in different communities. This may help explain some of the unemployment. Have you considered being even bolder in terms of alternative to the traditional prudent business practices, that whether it means that we have to do some type of continual training to bring a person from loans, small business loans based on character loans, which banks are able to do, to all the way up until they are able to function fully. In fact, may not even need a loan. What are we doing to start to prime the pump, to begin the very process, instead of waiting, and not suggesting that you are, but all too often we wait to cherry pick people who would be a success anyway, who would be a success in any banking system, and we will lend them money rather than finding the next generation of entrepreneurs who can solve many of these problems that we have. How are we developing the very beginning? What institutes, whatever are we doing to develop them and use alternate, true, I'll be kind, additional alternative methods of looking at banking?
Well, I don't purport to be the spokesman for the banking industry as a whole. I, am representing our role as an alternate lender.
Sure.
And the purpose of our creation was that the New York State banks, in 1955 and have since that date, have recognized that, they're not maybe the best vehicle to do some of these alternate programs, not the least of which they are subject to myriad of regulations. If a regulated bank, whether it was a New York State regulated bank or a federal regulated bank, made a loan based on projections, it would be criticized by the regulator. So you have to start there, right? The banking system as a whole does not, the traditional banking system does not encourage risk of that type. So, heap whatever blame on all quarters on the banking system for not being responsive to the areas that you rightly identify as needing attention. But there are, there's forces and counterforces to that. So the banks in New York, how do they address that? They fund us generously to do precisely this. And when you talk about businesses that need help to start up, as I named the businesses, not a single one of them had a penny in revenue, right? When I sat down with the founder of Chobani Yogurt, I said, well, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? You have a pretty good feta cheese recipe. You make sort of like a cottage industry in Johnstown, New York. You're pretty good at feta cheese. What are you doing this yogurt thing for? Well, my family has a recipe. So it's all about, that was character. That was character. That's sitting down with that individual and sitting there. When I sit with the folks from Buffalo Boss, they had no business expanding to Harlem. No business. They were struggling in Brooklyn. They struggled at the Barclays. But character pushed me to push the button and say, okay, I'm going for that. All of those projects require connecting to the right people, Senator. And that's where the process works the least, is connecting to the right people. Finding, while it may seem like a silly, superficial solution or suggestion, creating a directory of those people, having alternate lenders as part of their being alternate lenders, having them show their cards. How many loan applications did you get? How did minority businesses go? How did all that happen? I want to know. And put that out there and let that be exposed to the public. Let that be exposed to members of the legislature. When these entities are coming forward and asking for grants for their CDFI, asking to participate in government programs, show me the money. Show me what you've done to make a difference. And making those connections relies so much on, so much more on partnerships and lack of ego. I mean, we see, the most aggravating part for me is economic development agencies actually fight amongst each other. We're supposed to be created to fill gaps. If we're competing with another economic development agency for the same customer and won't refer someone to another economic development agency if we can't help them, then we have a problem. right? So I do think that, while I don't want to spin it back to you, I do think that your help in galvanizing, attention to this and making it clear that there are lenders out there that are making loans. I mean, the Grameen model, will it work in New York? I don't know. You have to collect sales tax, get a business permit, can't put your stuff on the sidewalk, you can't make this noise, you have to close at 10. I don't necessarily think that all of the attachments to business in our country, in our state, may necessarily be as fit as well with that as it might in other less developed countries. But making connections to alternate lenders is the key. And you create a momentum. You create success stories. You create, this is what happened to me. You highlight and celebrate successes. I mean, our bridge to success, we're in the process of now developing essentially a self-aggrandizing piece about the success of our MWBs in the Bridge to Success program. They went that route, they put the effort in, and now essentially they get a state contract. It's like calling us to say, okay, Pat, although I say that in the legal sense, Pat, we need another $100,000. Okay, no problem, send us the contract, we're good to go. And that's what it becomes. So making connections to the right people and eliminating, and encouraging those kind of second looks and creativity with that. It's not for the faint of heart when you're not able to make loans on historic activity. But it is absolutely critical to our success. It's critical to incorporating all of New York into New York's success. And I couldn't agree with you more, that it's something that bears serious focus and attention, and we could use help from all quarters.
I look forward to working with you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yes, sir, thank you.
Thank you, Senator Sanders. We have been joined by Senator Kevin Parker and by Senator Leroy Comrie. Senator Parker, do you have any questions for this witness, or do you want to review?
Yes.
Go right ahead.
Good morning, Mr. McCrath. How are you?
I'm good, sir. Yourself?
Good. Thank you very much for joining us today. This is a huge issue for me and my community. And I know that 504 does a great job at trying to make loans across the spectrum. And wanted to know, outside of that program at EDC, is there, at the Business Development Corporation, do you have a specific MWBE program, and do you make loans outside of that program to MWBEs?
Yes and yes.
Okay. So before you elaborate, also, do you have a sense of what the breakdown is between women-owned enterprises and minority-owned enterprises?
In our portfolio or statewide?
In your portfolio.
Well, overall, more than 30% of our loans are to minority or women-owned businesses. Within that category of loans, and we will loan on average about $200 million a year, right? So about 30% of those. Our portfolio is $1.3 billion plus or minus. Mm-hmm. So about 30% is to women and minority businesses. That being said, within that cash, about 70% of that 30% is to minorities, right? But the troubling part of that, and in fairness and in full disclosure, those minorities, when people talk about lending to minorities, they don't address the key issue which I try to focus our company on, which is the traditional minorities in America.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear
the traditional minorities in America.
Okay.
I mean, minority lending may include the obstetrician on Park Avenue who happens to be from a country and he decided to settle in the United States. It could be any number of that may at some stage in their life were disenfranchised and had unequal opportunity, but now have substantial assets. Our focus is on how much of our portfolio is to Hispanic, to African American businesses, to the historic minorities in America, in New York State. And that's a harder question for us to answer because historically we didn't keep that data. It was minority, women, or that. So I can't.
Are you keeping that data now?
We do, yeah.
Okay. Let me ask you, so what is it we could be doing as a legislature to make your job easier in that regard?
I would say, one, continue to support and become conversant, or have members of your staff become conversant in programs like Bridge to Success, which is the MWB contracting program. Become conversant or sign a member of your staff to address issues from minority MWBEs, and to have them make the connections for them, to be aware of the resources. I will tell you anecdotally, I testified in front of the New York City Council about 24 months ago now, in a joint committee meeting between veterans, small business, and when there was one other committee. The complaint was lack of access to capital to veterans, right? And I said to every city member of the City Council, I will contact you after this hearing, I will come to your office, I will meet with you, I will design with you a program for your district, for your area, to reach out to veterans to make them know what's available. Emails, phone calls, letters, I never received a single response in response to my repeated request to meet with the member of the City Council to address the exactual claim that they were hoisting me on at the committee here. All right? So the issue is engagement. And I think, Senator, I know members of this committee and a number of members, and to get a level of engagement where you help us make these connections would be so important, because success begets success. Yeah. These contractors, they're on job sites, they're talking to each other. And I can't tell you that Shep from AMM Electric, who we've made now 5 loans to under the Bridge to Success program, MWBE Mobilization Capital, Shep talks to people on the job. And we get loan applications, we're starting to see loan applications from the electrical contractor, talking to the mason, talking to the rebar guy. So those things, those connections are very important. So helping us connect would be essential and very much appreciated.
Okay.
Senator Comrie?
Thank you, Senator. Good morning,
morning,
Mr. McGraw. Wanted to ask you, just to follow up on what Senator Barker was saying, how do you do those outreach opportunities so that businesses can find you? Are you doing it through internet? Are you contacting them directly, or how is that process coming?
All of the above, sir. First of all, let me thank you for your long-standing support of York College,
Yes,
of which I am an alumni.
I was going to mention that, but I got a cold, so I'm trying to be focused. But since you mentioned York, Harry Wells is truly a person that truly believes in trying to help small businesses. I do refer almost every small business or person with an entrepreneurial idea to him because he is dedicated to trying to help people.
Yes, sir. The small business development centers throughout the state of New York, as I earlier mentioned, gets financial support. We work with them closely. I happen to be on the board of the advisory board for New York State Small Business Development Services. So for instance, picking a small microcosm, how do we reach out to minority small businesses? And I'm picking Jamaica, Queens.
Right.
So we have an annual event with the Greater Jamaica Development, and probably we'll have more now that Hope Knight is the executive director there, because I have a relationship with Hope from her UMass days. And we will see more engagement there. But we at the Harvest Center, we have an annual SBA event with York College in particular. Because one of the issues I didn't mention in my testimony, and I think impacts this area, and is consistent with your comment, Senator, about people tending to hire people and feel comfortable with people that look like them, that act like them. That's a given. One of the things I've noticed is the absolute dearth of African Americans in the banking industry. I mean, they're in the CDFI space, they're in the investment banking space, but in the on the ground level in the commercial lending space, we don't see that.
Right.
So one of the programs we do at your college, for instance, we give a scholarship each year, a full scholarship, to a woman or minority who is studying finance or accounting. And we pay, and we have had individuals coming through our program that we've given full-time jobs to, and that have gone on into finance as accounting at larger firms and work for the city of New York. And we found our goal is to create a presence of MWBEs in finance so that exactly the phenomenon that you talked about could be supported. We do in Red Hook Initiative, any of you familiar with that? We give a $100,000 grant to Red Hook because their work is so good, we can't replicate it, but we can support it. And them working with communities and bringing people along and giving opportunities in finance. We work through the SBDCs. 3 weeks ago, I don't know if you know Niles Stewart or the Carver Bank. Niles and I did an Access to Capital event at the Carver Bank in Jamaica. And we spent the evening there talking to MWBEs about all sorts of financing. We did a similar event at the Carver branch at the Barclays Center in the Atlantic Terminal. And we are very active in outreach and those types of things. So as you could probably tell, I'm not shy about talking. So anywhere I can blow this horn, I will blow this horn. Any stage that you give me, I will speak from. And we will, we try to do it in an enthusiastic, positive way. We talk about success stories. We try to make connections. Okay, you're in this industry. Why don't I have you talk to so-and-so who had a loan from us and let him explain how it works. We're telling you to focus on financial statements. You think I'm crazy, but if I can convince you to do that, I'm 10 steps ahead of you're 10 steps ahead of where you were yesterday.
Right. I've worked with Mr. Wells on doing access to capital workshops, and we'll intend to do more. And I'm glad to know that you work with Carver Bank in Jamaica. But I was bringing up the question, hoping to hear that you might be able to start doing like they do for the I Love New York campaigns to advertise your services. So many people, even when we do outreach, don't hear the message and don't get it when you do individual outreach. I know it's hard to do mass mailings, but I think that you should be able to get some commercial space on that same airwave time as the I Love New York campaign. Access to capital and the ability of minorities to understand their role in developing the wherewithal and the language to even reach out to these groups is there's not a lot of advertising. There may be one ad or two a year in a local paper, but there really needs to be a larger campaign to let people know that these opportunities are available.
Yeah, I think I agree. I mean, we're not funded for that. We would happily accept the PSC message to carry the flag on that point. But one of the issues is that one of the problems that you have is competition, right? In Jamaica, between 169th Street and 150th Street, you have the York College Small Business Development Center. 3 blocks up on the other side of Jamaica Avenue, you have the New York City Small Business Solutions Center,
right,
which competes with the Small Business Development Center. You have the Greater Jamaica Development Loan Fund. Across the street is the JBRC Loan Fund, which compete with each other and make no well, I don't think JBRC is around anymore, but
right,
they compete with each other.
Well,
and those dollars get diluted.
It's different markets, though. I'd argue that the different entry levels are at all 3 levels, and I think that there's more than enough room for all 3. But I definitely refer most people to the York College site because you get a more comprehensive early look. The Workforce Center, which I fought to get into Jamaica, developed into a business solution center as well. But most people still come back to York to get their fundamental needs done. So I don't think it's necessarily a overabundance, and I don't want anybody thinking that we have too much. I think that it still needs that there's the message going out to people as to where to go and how to access capital and how to access the capital or loan fund range between the $10,000 and $50,000 cycle is really the key point for people to be able to start to fund their businesses. And I'm talking about smaller entrepreneurs, people that are trying to start or expand their in-home businesses to local businesses, restaurants that need working capital that are trying to start, and other small manufacturers that are trying to work on import and exporting. That's been the folk that have come to me recently regarding business help.
Well, I think prior to your coming to here, I talked about the most essential aspect of success here is helping us make connections, which is that you hit the nail on the head. And we try to do that in any way we can and are open to any solutions. I would like the privilege of calling you to visit with you if you have any more ideas about that. I'd love to pursue it.
Well,
that Jamaica Piece of Paradise is one that is dear to my heart.
Right, I'd love to pursue the opportunity for you to have more opportunities to do advertising. So I work with that. And I mean, this message is not directed to you directly, but to those ears that have the power to fund that opportunity. So I think together, working on that, we can make that reality.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
But I don't want you to put out the word that Jamaica has too much. We still have, and we have a lot of business people that are trying to create opportunities to be self-employed, and to encourage entrepreneurship is an important facet of what we need to do to make Jamaica, keep Jamaica the best district in the state. So thank you very much.
Yes, sir. I know, I think it's much improved. I remember dodging the rivets from the elevated train on Mack Avenue, much improved.
That's true.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Senator Comrie. Assemblywoman Bichot.
Thank you, Mr. Mackrell, for being here and testifying, and all of the things that you're doing and your commitment to this issue around capital access for minority and women business enterprise. And I also want to thank you for acknowledging my newsletter. For those of you who don't have any, there's some in the back, and I have a gentleman from Amni who has it. And that's what we're trying to do. We're actually trying to help with the outreach in terms of whatever programs that we know of from the state or the city. We want to make sure that it's getting to the people that you're probably not getting to. I do want to comment on the board of directors. I do agree with Senator Sanders that we need more minorities. We need Black people. We need Asian people. We need more women. There's only about 5 or something. We need Hispanics. We don't have any Latinos. So we need a commitment that this will change a bit to reflect the state of New York City. Can I get that commitment from you?
I don't elect the board of directors.
Okay.
I will.
Can you bring
I
it
will,
back?
I will make a commitment to you to carry your message to my board of directors and the shareholders. I will do that.
One of the issues that you mentioned was, although the programs are available, the demand is not there. And again, going back to Senator Comrie, we just need to find a better way of marketing our programs. I'm on the ground. I'm talking to these MWBEs. They're telling me that they do everything possible. They are credit worthy. They're not getting access to the loans. They're not getting access to a lot of the programs. Many times when you do have a building or a resource, it's way out. It's not entrenched where the density of the minority communities are. And so one recommendation it would be to maybe have satellite offices and do a better job in terms of working with ethnic media to get the word out. And I do think we need funds aside when we're working with our lending institutions. That should be part of the package. So that's just a recommendation to bring back to your team. You also mentioned that 30% of the loans that you give out goes to MWBEs, and it's about 30% of about 1.4 billion. I wanted to get a sense of what type of loans are they, what's the average loan size, because it really dictates on what type of companies. You mentioned they're probably not traditional minority companies. We want the traditional minority companies. We want the traditional women companies. So we want to get a sense of, what's the average loan size? I mean, are we giving funds to 5 companies? Are we giving funds to 10 companies? Are we giving funds to where the majority of the MWBEs might be? Maybe for contracts under $1 million. Who are getting these funds? My other question is credit worthiness. Who is defining credit worthiness? Many of our small businesses, minority and women business, in our definition, are credit worthiness, are credit worthy. How are the banks, how are the institutions defining that? I mean, for a very long time, the set of standards that were set aside for traditional companies versus smaller companies or minority companies were very different. And so we need to understand how are these things defined, especially if it's small companies, as you mentioned, who is trying to get a contract. They may not have the collateral that's needed. How do you position that company to be eligible for that loan? Maybe they are doing well, they're not negative cash flow. Maybe they are net zero, or maybe they're positive, but maybe they don't have hardcore assets on their balance sheet. that could provide them enough collateral to get the loan or to get the contract. So some of those things we need to look very clearly in, like, how are we defining eligibility? That is an issue. And when I hear you talk about alternate lenders, I'm scared. I don't know what alternate lenders mean. I'm scared that it's predatory lenders, you know, hard loans and things of that nature. Why aren't our traditional banks, you know, setting aside funds or, you know, using their community reinvestment development department to give out good traditional loans to these, what, you know, what I would think credit-worthy small businesses with good interest rates? We do not want to put our small businesses in a situation where the term and the agreement and the interest rate does not match their ability to excel and get a profit. How, you know, what's the term of these loans? So these are things that we need to look at in terms of why we have a lack of hope, or why many of these minority and women-owned businesses are turned away. Maybe they are eligible, you know, and they're just being turned away for whatever guidelines are set aside specifically for these type of companies. I would like to see the big banks involved, more of the big banks. Alternative lending, great, but I'm not too comfortable with that word. Why can't the big banks that have the capacity, even have the capacity to take on some risk, to invest in our community, invest in these businesses? That's an issue. And again, I agree that these institutions should also look into setting some funds aside to help build capacity. And you'll notice in my newsletter, some of the legislation I wrote was really based on testimonies from the MWEs. Do we have any funds? We should have set aside funds, set aside to build capacity, help with the bookkeeping, the financial management. A lot of these small businesses are 2-3 people, and they're just looking for a way to get to the next stage. You know, they need to be here or there. They need to go all the way to Manhattan or all the way to Albany just to go to a workshop, and you know, they cannot fully operate their day-to-day business. So there's a lot of things and measures that we have to take into consideration.
Thank you.
And finding a comprehensive way of how do we get these resources to our community? How do we get funds set aside to help build these minority women business-owned enterprise that's been excluded for a very long time based on discrimination. And that's why we have such a large disparity that does not reflect the face of the state of New York. Thank you.
I can answer any or all of those questions.
I was gonna
but
say, I
that's-
think there was a
that's-
question
I kept
in
track
there
of the questions,
somewhere.
but, you know, let me just address, I think, one of the core issues, you know, access. You know, the banks that you refer to do